So we've got our colors ready to go: pink, purple, dark blue, and a light blue if you have one, and then a lot of white. So the first step to do is we're going to draw 3 circles, and that's going to be our white space. So we're not going to paint in that. So here you can see I did a couple different ones. I recommend doing like 3. You can do less or more if you want, but these are like the spaces where we don't want paint. So go ahead, draw it wherever you want. I kind of drew them like in the top, middle, and the lower, but I might just mix it up this time. So use your pencil, and you can draw 3 different size circles. Okay, so that's our white space. So don't paint anything in it. That is the only rule. Plus, have a lot of fun because this is lab week and painting pathology is a blast. All right. So the first cell we're going to paint is our myeloma cells. So I'll try to put it up here and zoom in so you guys can see it a little bit better. I'll try as much as I can so you guys can see it. So these, the Mott cells are, they're not perfect circles, and they all shouldn't be the same size. So feel free to mix it up and do different sizes and shapes, but they should be kind of ovaloid shaped. To make this color, I use a lot of blue and white and maybe some purple. So I'm gonna start by picking up the white, get like a lot of white, and then I'm gonna take like a little dab of the blue from the corner of my brush. And you can see like a little bit of blue goes a long way. If you want to make it darker, you can certainly make it darker. And sometimes I add a little bit more purple. But feel free to experiment with the different blues. Like they all kind of look pretty. So sometimes I use a little bit more of a turquoise kind of color. Then I add a little bit more purple. Every painting turns out a little bit different, which I kind of like. So just kind of go with the vibe that you're feeling. If you want more purple looking Mott cells or more blue looking Mott cells, go for it. So I'm just mixing the blues and the purples. So the trick to these cells, we want to give them a 3D looking effect. So the center of the cell is going to be more light blue, and then the outer side, the outer parameter of the cell is going to be darker. So let's paint a couple of these. We're going to paint a lot of them. I want to say like 15 of these in total or more, depending on what you're feeling. So I'm going to start making an outline of the cell so you can see on my camera. Let me know if you can't see it. But I use the flat brush and I just kind of like spin it around. And then I get this like ovalish shape. And then I go and I pick up the lighter blue and some white. Then I just kind of like paint it in the middle. And I just kind of smooth it out and keep blending it so it looks nice and even, like a nice gradient. And that should give it that 3D pop. Now, if you think that your cells need a little bit more contrast, you can go ahead and pick up some more blue and purple. Make sure it's like really dark, and you can like again go around the edges of the cell and just lightly paint around the outer side. So hopefully that makes sense. Then if you get too much paint, you see it's like kind of gumming up, and that means you have a little bit too much paint on your brush. So you might need to dab your brush on the paper towel so it's not too much. So the balance, it's like a balance of having enough paint on your brush and not having too much. So it just takes some time. Okay. So on a clean part of your plate, grab a bunch of white and then take quite a bit of pink. It kind of depends on the pink color you have and the brand you're using. Just make like a nice soft cotton candy kind of pink. Super pretty. You can add a little bit of purple in it if you want. Makes it like a nice lavender kind of color. And similar concept to these cells, we can add like a 3D effect to it by making the center of the cell lighter and then the edges of the cell darker. So I might kind of experiment a little bit with the colors here. Okay, so now that when you get a nice light pink color, you're going to want to find a spot on your canvas where you want to put one. Well, it's kind of like solving a puzzle here. You got to put it in a spot that you think might be good. You don't want them clustered together too much. You want to kind of spread them apart. So I might put one right here. I have enough room between these cells. So these neutrophils are kind of like round and have like a squiggly outline, best way I can describe it. So I'll kind of I'll demonstrate one and you guys can see. So with my flat brush, I basically will kind of lay it down and kind of make it a little zigzaggy while I'm painting, keep the brush on the canvas. And I just keep kind of swirling it around. And then it can kind of hug around the myeloma cells, but don't touch them or like get the paint smeared. And there you go. So don't make a perfect circle, but it should just kind of fit in there. And then you can pick up some more pink and purple to make the edges darker, to make it look 3D. Then just kind of like blend it in a little bit more. So just around the edges. Just kind of like smooth it out. And if you want the center a lot lighter, then just take some more white and just kind of blend it in there. Then I'll come back and probably add more touch-ups. You can only get so much in on the first layer because it all starts to blend and look the same color. So I might just touch it up a little bit to remind myself to go back. All right, so then let's do 5 of these cells. I'm gonna rotate it. I'm gonna add a nice one over here. I might add 2. All right, so the next one we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna paint kind of in the edges, on the outer edges of this painting. We're gonna do the big kind of hematopoietic blasty looking cells. They're not a super big focus. They're just kind of like off to the side, but they do fill in some space. So these are like purplish looking cells. So all you need to do is make some purple, some light purple, and then paint it in like any corners or any like big spaces where you feel it's a little awkward and needs something in it. So take my white. I like to lay down my white first because I don't like mixing in a bunch of colors into my white because it needs to be like as pure as possible. So again, just take some purple and white. If you don't have purple, you can mix red and blue together. Okay, so I have a nice purple looking color. I'm going to come into, say, my corner right here is kind of like empty. So I want to just do like a nice semicircle swoop and just fill that in like that. And then again, pick up some of that purple by itself and kind of blend it into the edges and kind of like smooth it out so it kind of blends in nicely. So I would do like 3 of these cells just in edges or corners that are kind of empty. All right, so when you guys are ready, we'll start painting in some red blood cells. So the color we're going to use is like a soft pink purple color. They're not the main focus of the painting, so these are just kind of filling in the white spaces. So as you can see in here, I just kind of did some small circles here, nothing too dramatic. We don't have to worry about 3D shading on these. They just are meant to kind of be in the background and enhance the other blood cells we want to bring into focus. So we're going to use a similar color to what we used for our neutrophils, but just add a little bit more white. And then we're going to do small circles or ovaloid shapes and kind of fill it in like in between the cells where you can see that they might fit. So you can kind of use this as a reference. They just kind of like fit into smaller spaces where there's some decent sized gaps. They're about the size of I don't know, a dime or a quarter. So I just kind of go through and just do whatever you feel like needs, wherever you feel like it needs. And I just use my flat brush and I kind of just do a simple circular motion. Kind of make a more ovaloid. You just kind of fill in the gaps. If you want to get really fancy, you can make it like biconcave and you can make it more of a central pallor if you really want to, but it's not, I wouldn't waste your time doing all that. You can use a smaller round brush to add in details, especially for shading. Like we already kind of did that on the other cells with the bigger brush, but if you really want to go in and add more fine detail, you can use the small round brush. So I'm going to go through and touch up a couple areas that I feel like, in my opinion, need a little extra something. So primarily I'm just going back and touching up the neutrophils. Just along the edges where they're touching other cells, it kind of gives it more realism. I just use the purple pink color to kind of go along the edges just a little bit. But I think we're at a good point to start adding in our details. So one of the most important details that we're going to do is painting in the nuclei of our cells. And this is what really brings it to life. So these are very easy. We're just going to use a lot of purple and pink hues to add in the nuclei, and the shape and the location of them kind of matters. So just pay attention really quick here. So for the myeloma cells, they are off-centered. So when we paint in the nuclei, we're going to kind of paint it closer to one edge and leave more cytoplasm for the vacuolations. So we'll walk through a couple examples. Feel free to paint it anywhere you want in the cell, as long as it's on the opposite end, completely one side of the cell. So we'll start with the myeloma cells first. Trying to think of what kind of brush I need to use for this. Maybe a smaller flat brush. Just going through my collection here and seeing what ones I want to use. So I'm just using a smaller flat brush. And we're going to create a very dark purple, little bluish color. You can you don't have to mix these completely. They can kind of have some variation in their color. So what I mean by that is just scoop up some purple and scoop up some pink. And then you can like add a touch of blue. I'm not adding a whole ton of white to this, but I kind of partially mix it. I don't know if you kind of see, it's not completely blended. I used to perfectly blend it, and I realized like these cells the nuclei aren't 100% solid. They're going to be a little like the chromatin can be a little bit dispersed in some areas. So I just like to kind of mix it up and make it a little bit interesting. And so when it's just kind of like soupy and mixed up like that, take a little bit on your brush, and we're going to do the circular motion again. So I'm going to just show you guys in close detail here. So for this cell, I'm going to paint more on this edge. I'm just kind of feeling the way that's the way the cell wants to be. So again, I just kind of go in here and I do a nice circle like that. And then just kind of smooth out. I had a little bit too much paint on my brush. Something like that. So then just go through all the blue cells and do this kind of pattern. So choose one side that you want the nuclei to be on and go ahead and paint your nuclei. And then we'll get to the neutrophils next. And I like to apply the paint on a little bit thick for these, because sometimes I feel like it gets too thinned out. So I might go back and add a little bit more paint on top of it, especially the dark purple. This is my favorite part of the painting process, because we're painting a bunch of abstract looking shapes, and then we start adding the nuclei and the details, and you're like, wow, it actually looks like a real slide here. And try not to make them point in all the same direction. It adds some good variation when you kind of mix it up. Should be kind of finishing up the nuclei for the myeloma cells. We're gonna add in the nuclei for our big purple cells on the edges. This is again just kind of like a half circle, dark purple pink color. Just a little bit off the edge, so leave some room around the purple, and just go in and do like a half circle kind of shape like that. Nothing too crazy. When you guys are ready for the next one, Let me grab a slightly smaller brush for the neutrophils. So these cells, these aren't circular nuclei. These are multi-lobed, multilobulated. They're kind of like kidney beans. So we're going to paint some kidney beans and string them together with a little connection point here. So I'll show you how to paint these in. They're kind of wonky looking. So to zoom in so you can see, I might use just a regular round brush for this, depending on what you guys have. Yeah, I think I'm gonna just use my like detailed brown brush. Pick up your pink and purples. So paint like 3 kidney bean shaped objects in the nucleus or in the cytoplasm here. And I just kind of like do a little swoop, like an S kind of shape motion. Go in and I pick up more paint. And I just kind of like make it random. Like every cell looks a little bit different. Something like that. Just kind of connect them a little bit. You can connect them with like a band. Because that kind of looks like a band cell more, or like anything. Again, so go and do that. Make them all look a little bit different. So while we wait for that to dry, let's address what we're going to do with the circles now. I said don't paint in them, but we need to do something with it because we have some pencil or pen on our canvas and we should kind of cover that up a little bit. So the way I kind of avoid this the way I handle this is I take some purple and just paint around the circle. And then I kind of fan out the purple color to the edges. So it looks like it's like stain or the dye of the cells is just like pooling there. So that gets rid of the ugly looking pencil mark. So the way I do this is I use pretty watered down light purple color. So take some of your water. My water is like kind of purple already. So that kind of helps us in this case. So I'm going to use some of that, mix up my purplish color again, make it really watery. It's kind of like a watercolor consistency. And I just go around the edges of it and make sure I just try to cover up the pencil as much as possible. And if you need to add some more dark purple around that, you can. We just don't want that pencil marking in the final. And you just kind of fan it out between the cells and so there. Hopefully that makes some sense. It's kind of a weird. You can use acrylics kind of like watercolor, depending how dark you want it to be. But if you've ever tried painting with watercolor, it's kind of finicky. It's all about like how much water you use and dilute the colors. I got some paint on my cells. But if you just use some water, you can kind of scrub it out a little bit. So you can see how it's just like a nice rim of purple. So try doing that on the other 2 circles you did. This gives us some more time for our cells to dry a little bit more because we're going to go over and add the details on top of it. So now we have, it's pretty much all done, but we have to add our details to our neutrophils and our details to our mott cells. So we know these neutrophils are granular cells. So here's this is an eosinophil, but similar concept where you're going to put a bunch of granules into the cell. And these can be like pink and purple and all different variations. But this is like a little bit this is super detailed. We don't have to go into that much detail, but for the purpose of this painting, we're going to go in and use the back of our brush. I'll show you the tip of our brush handle. So you're going to use the tip instead. And we're going to dip that in purple and pink paint, and we're going to just dot it all around the cell. Sorry, that's my dog barking upstairs. Okay, so I'm going to use a thinner. So use a pretty thin tip. You can use a toothpick if you want to. And I just kind of like dot it all around in the pink and purple mixture. And then I just go in and I dot it kind of randomly all throughout the cytoplasm. So we'll start here. Hopefully you guys can see. I just go in and just keep dipping and dotting. Just make it random. Don't give it a pattern. Just make it random. You can add as many or as little as you want. You can paint all over the top of the nuclei too. So then the last part we're going to do is the mott cells. So this is just the final touches. This brings home the entire painting. So use pure white paint. Again, use the base of your paintbrush, dip it in, and what you're going to do is you're going to do these on the opposite side of the nucleus. So my nucleus is here, so I'm going to do kind of like a rim of the white vacuoles on the other side. So don't do them like the entire cell, just do them on the outer edges, like opposite. And then this kind of makes the painting look super pretty. You don't have to do them in every cell, but definitely at least half the cells put the vacuoles in. You could put 1, you can put 10, 20, it doesn't matter how many dots you put in. curious to see how everyone's painting turned out. And I'm always open to more suggestions or things to paint, do like a painting session. I'll keep an eye out for future dates that might work well with my busy schedule to do another session. But I appreciate you guys all supporting me and joining me in this fun painting event. Okay. Looks very similar to my last one. I might just make a mural of these every time I paint. So, all right, guys, tag me in the in your posts if you want to share them. You're very welcome, Joanna. Thanks for joining. You guys are great. Have a fun lab week, rest of your lab week. Follow along, tag me and stuff. I'll repost your things. I'm very excited to see how everyone's art came out.